Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. In today's video, I'm going over the best Zelda games of all time. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, a little while back, actually a long while back, 4 years ago, I did a video very similar to this one where I ranked my top 5 Zelda games. At the time of that video, I had played a lot of Zeldas back to back to come up with that list. We had Breath of the Wild at number 1, Ocarina of Time at number 2, Link's Awakening at number 3, Wind Waker at number 4, and A Link Between Worlds at number 5. My opinions have significantly changed since then. I've had a lot of time in this last year to go through a lot of different Zelda games. I've been through Breath of the Wild now 4 different times. So without further delay, here is my undisputed list of the best Zelda games of all time. If you haven't played one of the games on this list, I highly recommend checking it out. In 5th place, we have The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, and no, this is not on the list just because Skyward Sword HD was announced. Skyward Sword was released back in 2011 on the Nintendo Wii, almost 10 years ago. It has a great story, cheerful music, and cheerful graphics. It's lighthearted and it features some very interesting characters. Skyward Sword has some pretty great replayability, and flying around on Toucan Sam is a lot of fun. I do have one major problem with this game, and I think a lot of people will have the same one, and that's with the motion controls. Now, the idea behind the motion controls makes a lot of sense, and I like how it was implemented. I just didn't like using the Wiimote. In my opinion, the Wiimote was kind of trash for a game like this. Every time I've played through this game, I've gotten frustrated at the Wiimotes, whether it be a motion not registering or having to recenter my aim again and again and again. It's not an enjoyable experience, and I don't think it ever will be. Now, Nintendo kind of fixes this problem with Skyward Sword HD. They have an option to turn off motion controls and play with buttons only, which I'm really looking forward to. On top of that, I'm pretty sure the Joy-Cons will be far more responsive than the Wiimote. The only real issue you'll have now is dealing with Joy-Con drift. In 4th place, we have Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask came out on the Nintendo 64 about 11 years ago, back in 2000. It's kind of a sequel to Ocarina of Time, and when this game was released, it had a lot to live up to. Ocarina of Time was regarded during that period as probably the best Zelda ever. The game is kind of creepy and has a lot of creepy things, but in my opinion, it took what Ocarina of Time did and just made it better. I think the story is great, and collecting masks in this game is fun and rewarding, not tedious. Clock Town is very interesting. It's a 3-day time period and different things happen on different days. And to me, the map feels very different. Different areas in the map give off a completely different vibe. Now, I couldn't even tell you how many times I've played through Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time. When I normally do it, I'll play through Ocarina of Time and then go on to Majora's Mask, but this time I did it different. I played through Majora's Mask first, and then I went to Ocarina of Time. It became apparent pretty quickly which game I liked more. In comparison with Majora's Mask, I find Ocarina of Time just feels maybe a little hollow. In 3rd place, I have Twilight Princess and Twilight Princess HD. It was released all the way back in 2006 on the GameCube and on the Wii. In my opinion, the GameCube version is the far superior one. I really don't like those Wiimotes. I don't know if you remember, but back in 2000, a demo for The Legend of Zelda on GameCube was shown, and a lot of people were extremely excited about seeing a game just like this. And then a lot of people were disappointed when we finally got Wind Waker, which was not at all like that tech demo. And then at E3 2004, the entire Nintendo community got extremely excited when they showed the trailer for Twilight Princess. This trailer looked so much more like the tech demo that was originally shown, and it actually looks better than the tech demo. The trailer featured a massive world with Link using a sword on a horse and some pretty good combat, and fortunately the game delivered on all fronts. The combat, in my opinion, is some of the series' best, and also it's added a very unique level of gameplay with Wolf Link. I really think this is the best 3D Zelda game ever made. If you have not played Twilight Princess or Twilight Princess HD, I highly recommend checking it out. even if you play it through an emulator. In second place, we have A Link to the Past on Super Nintendo. A Link to the Past was released back in 1991-1992, so about 30 years ago. For a game that came out 30 years ago, it still holds up today. It's got a great story, a massive world, and I think the graphics have held up a lot better than the N64 games. This game is pretty unique for a couple of reasons. One, Link has pink hair, and secondly, this was the first Zelda game to feature the Master Sword. This game has a pretty robust map, both light and dark worlds, a ton of area to explore, and it's difficult yet rewarding. The game has a ton of different items, which leads to a ton of different playstyles. The combat in this game is amazing. It's a smooth, crisp game that is a masterpiece on the Super Nintendo. It's one of the system's best games. In fact, it's better than a lot of 2D games that come out today. And now for the absolute best Zelda of all time, Link's Awakening, both the original and the remake. I mean, technically there are 3 versions, the original one for the Game Boy, the one for the Game Boy Color called Link's Awakening DX, and the one for Nintendo Switch. All of these games have pretty much the exact same story. It's technically the exact same game, but there are some small differences between the versions. And if you want to check out each version of the game to see the differences yourself, you can, because these games are not very long. And that's because the game was developed back in 1993 for the Game Boy, which was not known as a performance powerhouse. And even given that limitation, I think Link's Awakening has the best and the most charming story out of the entire series. The original Game Boy game even holds up very well today. The combat in this game is a blast. It might not be as diverse as A Link to the Past, but it's simple, straightforward, and to the point. And it also has a dedicated block button. I honestly couldn't tell you how many times I've beaten Link's Awakening over the years. This game has a ton of replayability. For a Game Boy game, the world size is actually pretty big, and just like I said, A Link to the Past is a masterpiece on the Super Nintendo. Link's Awakening is a masterpiece on the Game Boy, and actually one of the Game Boy's best games ever. Whether I'm playing this game on the Switch or the Game Boy or an emulator on my phone, this is the best Zelda experience that I've ever had. If I could only keep one Zelda game and I'd have to get rid of every other one I own, well, I'd keep Link's Awakening. And yeah, the game is short. It's between 10 to 15 hours, or even less if you know what you're doing. But those 10 to 15 hours are jam-packed with a lot of goodness. I do think it's kind of funny that my favorite Zelda game doesn't even feature Zelda. Now you might be wondering, hey, where is Breath of the Wild? Why is it not on the list, considering it was in first place last time? I've played through this game 4 different times. The first time I played through it, I was amazed by it. It was a bit of a grind, but at the same time, everything was new and exciting. Playthroughs 2, 3, and 4 to me were not near as fun. I find the game a little bit too slow-paced, everything is a little bit too spread out, and after you've explored everything, going through the game again to me just seems boring. If I'm trying to go for 100% complete on this game, it's not enjoyable at all. It's too much of a grind and there's too much needless stuff that I gotta do. But I mean, some people might really like collecting all 20 million Korok seeds. Now, I'm not saying Breath of the Wild is a bad game at all. It's a fantastic game with a lot of cool stuff. I just think after the initial excitement of Breath of the Wild wears off, there are better Zelda games out there. But anyways, that is all I've got for today. Let me know your thoughts on the best Zelda games of all time in the comments below. Are you surprised that I put Majora's Mask over Ocarina of Time? Are you surprised that I put Link's Awakening above Link to the Past? And are you surprised that I completely took Breath of the Wild out of the equation altogether? If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Thank you everyone, take care.